She had lost everything, except her courage. When a Navajo warrior's laughter breaks the silence of the desert, a moment of defiance turns into a journey that will change both their lives forever. What begins with distrust soon becomes something far deeper, as the harsh land reveals truths neither expected. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. In the harsh landscape of Arizona Territory, 1885, Sarah Miller clutched her infant daughter closer to her chest as the stagecoach rattled over rocky terrain. A young widow at 23, she had left everything behind in Boston after her husband's death, answering an advertisement to become a schoolteacher in the small settlement of Cedar Creek. "How much longer?" Sarah asked the driver, her voice barely audible over the creaking wheels. "About an hour, ma'am," he replied, casting a concerned glance at the darkening sky. "Storms brewing. Might be trouble ahead." Sarah nodded, anxiety gnawing at her. The other passengers, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple, had disembarked at the previous stop, leaving her alone with her 6-month-old daughter, Emma. The stagecoach lurched suddenly, and a crack like thunder split the air. Sarah was thrown forward as the coach tilted precariously. "Indians!" the driver shouted, his voice tight with fear. "Hold on!" Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as arrows whistled past. Emma began to wail. The coach tipped, sending them tumbling as it rolled onto its side. Pain exploded in Sarah's shoulder. Through dust and panic, she saw the driver sprawled motionless on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Clutching Emma, Sarah crawled from the wreckage. The desert stretched endlessly around them. No shelter, no water, no help. A horse's snort made her turn. 3 mounted men approached. Navajo warriors, their faces stern beneath wide-brimmed hats that mixed their traditional garb with elements adopted from settlers. The leader, tall and imposing with a scar running down his cheek, dismounted. He wore a blue cavalry shirt over traditional leggings, a testament to the blending of worlds. "Please," Sarah whispered, holding Emma protectively. "We mean no harm." The warrior studied her silently, then spoke in perfect English. "You cross Navajo land. White settlers bring nothing but trouble." "I'm traveling to Cedar Creek," Sarah explained, her voice steadying. "I'm to be their schoolteacher." The warrior laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the empty landscape. "Cedar Creek is 3 days' ride. You won't survive the night with a baby." Sarah straightened, desperation giving her courage. "Then help us. Or are Navajo warriors afraid of a woman and her child?" The leader's companions muttered angrily, but he raised a hand to silence them. He considered Sarah, his dark eyes unreadable. "I'm Key Nez," he finally said. "My people call me Long Walker. What do they call you?" "Sarah Miller. This is my daughter, Emma." Key approached the driver's body and knelt briefly. "He's dead." He examined the coach. "Apache raiders. Not my people." Sarah swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "You die here," said one of the other warriors in Navajo, which Sarah didn't understand. Key replied in the same language, his tone sharp. Then to Sarah, "Our village is half a day's ride. You can shelter there until it's safe to continue." "And if I refuse?" Key's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You'll come anyway. The desert takes what it wants, and today it wants your life. I'm offering an alternative." And Sarah looked at her daughter's face, pink and perfect, and knew she had no choice. "Thank you." Key lifted her onto his horse with surprising gentleness, passing Emma back to her once she was settled. "Hold tight," he instructed. "The path is not kind." As they rode away from the wreckage, Sarah wondered what awaited them. The desert sun beat down mercilessly, and dust clouded her vision. Emma had quieted, lulled by the rhythm of the horse. Against all reason, Sarah felt safe with this stern warrior who had laughed at her plight, but offered help nonetheless. "Why are you helping us?" she asked as they crested a rise. Key didn't turn. "My wife died bringing our son into the world 5 winters ago. The boy lived. He would be near your daughter's age now." "I'm sorry," Sarah said softly. "Don't be sorry. Be strong. The desert demands it, and so will our people." The landscape changed gradually, scrubby brush giving way to red rock formations that towered like sentinels. Sarah's body ached from the fall and the unaccustomed riding, but she remained upright, determined not to show weakness. As the sun began its descent, a village appeared in the distance, hogans arranged in a semicircle, smoke rising from cooking fires. Sarah felt the weight of unseen eyes as they approached. "My people are cautious of strangers," Key warned, "especially those with pale skin." "I understand caution," Sarah replied. "I'll respect your ways." Key glanced back, something like approval in his eyes. "Perhaps you will survive this land after all, Sarah Miller." As they entered the village, Sarah held her head high despite her fear. Children stopped their play to stare. Women paused in their work. An elderly man stepped forward, speaking rapidly to Key in Navajo. "This is my grandfather, Hosteen Sozi," Key explained. "He asks why I bring trouble to our doorstep." Sarah dismounted carefully, cradling Emma. With as much dignity as she could muster, she addressed the old man. "I thank you for your hospitality, sir. We won't stay longer than necessary." Hosteen Sozi studied her, his weathered face impassive. Finally, he nodded once and spoke. "He says you may stay in my sister's hogan." Key translated. "She died last winter. No one will disturb you there." A young woman approached, carrying a water skin. "This is Nijoni, my sister," Key said. "She will help you." Nijoni's expression was guarded but not unkind as she led Sarah to a round earthen structure. Inside, it was cool and dim, with a smoke hole in the center of the roof. A woven mat covered the dirt floor. "Rest," Nijoni said in halting English. "Food comes soon." Alone at last, Sarah sank down, exhaustion washing over her. Emma nursed hungrily, her tiny hands kneading Sarah's breast. "We'll be all right," Sarah whispered, not entirely sure she believed it. "We'll find our way to Cedar Creek and we'll build a new life." But as night fell over the Navajo village, Sarah wondered if the path ahead would lead where she had planned, or if the desert had other ideas entirely. Dawn broke over the Navajo village, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Sarah awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Emma slept peacefully beside her, tiny fists curled against her cheeks. The events of the previous day came rushing back: the stagecoach attack, the driver's death, and their rescue by Key Nez, the Navajo warrior with eyes like flint and a voice that betrayed little emotion. A shadow fell across the entrance to the hogan. Nijoni ducked inside, carrying a clay bowl of steaming porridge and a small bundle. "You eat," she said, setting down the food. "Then we wash clothes." She gestured to Sarah's dusty, blood-stained dress. "Thank you," Sarah replied gratefully. As she ate, Nijoni sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Emma with undisguised fascination. "She is strong," Nijoni commented. "Good lungs." Sarah smiled. "She's been strong since birth. My husband used to say she had the spirit of a warrior." "Your husband, he is where?" "He died," Sarah said simply. "Pneumonia took him last winter." Nijoni nodded, understanding in her dark eyes. "Many lost in cold months. Your man waits for you in next world." After eating, Sarah followed Nijoni to a small stream that ran near the village. Other women were already there, washing clothes and gossiping. They fell silent as Sarah approached, their gazes curious and wary. "Don't mind them," Nijoni advised. "White woman is strange sight here." Sarah knelt by the water's edge, grateful for the chance to clean herself and Emma's swaddling clothes. As she worked, a small boy approached, staring openly at Emma, who lay on a blanket nearby. "Hello," Sarah said gently. The boy didn't respond, but crouched to examine Emma more closely. When the baby grabbed his finger and gurgled, his solemn face broke into a surprised smile. "That's Ahiga," Nijoni explained. "Key's son." Sarah looked at the boy with new interest. "He's beautiful." "Ahiga means he fights," Nijoni continued. "Name fits. Birth nearly killed his mother. She held him once before spirits took her." Sarah's heart ached for the child who would never know his mother's touch. Impulsively, she reached out and smoothed his dark hair. "I'm sorry, little one." Ahiga didn't pull away, his attention fixed on Emma, who continued to coo and babble. For a moment they formed a tableau of unlikely connection. The Boston widow, her fair-haired daughter, and the Navajo boy who had also known loss too early. The peaceful scene was interrupted by Key's arrival. He spoke sharply to his son in Navajo, and the boy scrambled to his feet, casting one last glance at Emma before running off. "I apologize if Ahiga bothered you." Key said stiffly. Not at all, Sarah assured him. Children are naturally curious. Key's expression remained guarded. I came to tell you that I've spoken with traders who passed through. The Apache who attacked your stagecoach have moved north. It should be safe to travel to Cedar Creek in 2 days' time. Sarah nodded, surprised by the pang of reluctance she felt. Thank you for your hospitality. It is our way to shelter those in need, Key replied, though something in his tone suggested not everyone agreed with this decision. As if confirming her suspicion, an older warrior approached, speaking rapidly to Key in Navajo. The conversation grew heated, with the older man gesturing angrily toward Sarah. Is everything all right? She asked when the man finally stormed off. Bidzil believes all white settlers bring trouble, Key explained. His family was killed by cavalry soldiers 10 winters ago. I'm sorry for his loss, Sarah said quietly. His anger is understandable. Key studied her, surprise flickering across his features. Most white people would defend their kind. I can't defend what I don't know, Sarah replied honestly. But I know that suffering doesn't belong to just one people. Something shifted in Key's expression. Not quite softening, but a subtle change nonetheless. You speak wisdom for one so young. Loss ages the soul, Sarah said, thinking of her husband's pale face as fever claimed him. Key nodded slowly. This is true. He glanced at Ahiga, who was watching them from a distance. My son needs a mother's guidance. I can teach him to hunt, to track, to survive, but not how to hold his heart open. Children are resilient, Sarah assured him, and you clearly love him deeply. Love is not always enough, Key replied, a rare vulnerability in his voice. Before Sarah could respond, he straightened, his expression closing once more. Rest today. Tomorrow I will show you our ways, so you may tell your students that the Navajo are not the savages from your books. As he walked away, Sarah wondered at the complexity of this man. Stern warrior one moment, grieving widower the next. The desert had shaped him, hardened him, yet beneath that exterior she glimpsed something that resonated with her own experience of loss and survival. That evening, the village gathered around a central fire. An elderly woman began to sing, her voice rising and falling in patterns Sarah couldn't understand but found hauntingly beautiful. Emma slept against her chest, and Sarah felt a peculiar peace descend. Nijoni sat beside her, occasionally translating. She sings of first woman and first man, she explained, of how they journeyed through 4 worlds to reach this one. It's beautiful, Sarah murmured. Stories keep us whole, Nijoni replied simply. Across the fire, Key sat with Ahiga in his lap, the boy's eyes heavy with sleep. When their gazes met over the flames, Sarah felt an unexpected connection. 2 parents trying to forge paths for their children in an uncertain world. Later, as Sarah laid Emma down to sleep in the hogan, Nizoni brought a small carved wooden rattle. For the little one, she said, to keep bad dreams away. Touched by the gesture, Sarah accepted the gift. You're very kind. Nizoni shrugged. My brother says you have good heart. Rare thing in white woman. She hesitated, then added, Key does not smile since wife died. Today, watching you with Ahiga, he almost smiled. After Nijoni left, Sarah stood in the doorway of the hogan, gazing at the star-filled sky. The desert night was cool and infinitely vast, making her feel small, yet somehow part of something greater. In Boston, she had felt confined by grief and convention. Here, despite the danger and uncertainty, she felt strangely free. What would you think, Thomas? She whispered to her late husband's memory. Your proper Boston wife, sleeping in a Navajo dwelling, teaching their children about stars. The night offered no answer, but the weight of her grief seemed lighter somehow. Tomorrow would bring another day of waiting, another step on a journey whose destination seemed less certain with each passing hour. The promised 2 days stretched into 5 as news arrived of renewed Apache raids along the trail to Cedar Creek. Sarah found herself settling into an unexpected rhythm in the Navajo village. Each morning, she helped the women grind corn and prepare meals. In the afternoons, she sat with several children, including Ahiga, teaching them English words while they taught her Navajo phrases that she repeated with earnest determination, much to their amusement. Tree, she would say, pointing. Tsin, they would chorus back. Tsin, Sarah would attempt, her pronunciation making them giggle. Key often watched these impromptu lessons from a distance, his expression unreadable. Occasionally, he would correct her pronunciation or add a word, his voice gentler than when they'd first met. On the fifth evening, as Sarah sat outside her hogan watching the sunset with Emma in her lap, Key approached. "You've been patient," he observed, sitting beside her without asking permission. A familiarity that would have scandalized Boston society but seemed natural here. "Your people have shown me great kindness," Sarah replied. "I've no reason to complain. Yet Cedar Creek expects their teacher." He studied her profile. "Are you certain that is still your destination?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "Where else would I go?" Key shrugged. The Navajo believe that the wind sometimes blows people to where they are needed, not where they plan to be. Sarah considered this. "And where am I needed, according to the wind? That is for you to discover." He reached out tentatively, allowing Emma to grasp his finger. "Your daughter thrives here." "And Ahiga." He hesitated. "My son has not spoken since his mother died. Today he said book when you showed him the pictures." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. "I didn't realize." "There is much healing in your hands, Sarah Miller." Key's voice had dropped to almost a whisper. Perhaps the stagecoach attack was not misfortune but guidance. The intimacy of the moment was broken by shouts from the edge of the village. Key was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Bidziel, the warrior who had objected to Sarah's presence, was arguing with two white men on horseback. "Stay here," Key ordered, striding toward the commotion. Sarah clutched Emma closer, watching as Key intervened in the confrontation. The taller of the two white men dismounted, removing his hat to reveal sandy hair and a weathered face. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the silver badge on his chest, catching the last rays of sunlight. After several tense minutes of conversation, Key turned and beckoned to her. Heart pounding, Sarah approached, conscious of the stares from villagers who had gathered to witness the scene. "Mrs. Miller?" The tall man's voice held surprise and relief. "I'm Sheriff James Blackwood from Cedar Creek. When your stagecoach didn't arrive, we feared the worst." "The coach was attacked," Sarah explained. "The driver was killed. These people saved us." The sheriff nodded, though wariness remained in his eyes as he glanced at Key. "Well, ma'am, we've come to escort you to town. The school children are mighty eager to meet their new teacher." A complicated emotion twisted in Sarah's chest. Relief mingled with an unexpected reluctance. She looked at Key, whose face had returned to its stoic mask. "I need to gather our things," she said. "We'll wait," the sheriff replied. "But not long. Don't like being out here after dark." In the hogan, Sarah packed quickly, her movements mechanical. Nijoni appeared in the doorway, her expression solemn. "You go now," she stated rather than asked. "I must," Sarah replied. "It's why I came west." Nijoni nodded, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "My brother will miss your talks and Ahiga." She trailed off, then pressed a small pouch into Sarah's hand. "Healing herbs. For the journey. Thank you for everything," Sarah said, embracing the young woman impulsively. After a moment's surprise, Nijoni returned the embrace. Outside, the sheriff and his deputy waited impatiently. Key stood apart, his posture rigid. Ahiga clung to his father's leg, watching Sarah with wide, solemn eyes. "Ready, Mrs. Miller?" Sheriff Blackwood asked. "Just a moment," Sarah replied, approaching Key and Ahiga. She knelt to the boy's level, holding out the small book of nursery rhymes she had salvaged from her luggage. "For you," she said gently, "to practice your English." Ahiga accepted the gift with grave dignity, clutching it to his chest. Standing, Sarah met Key's gaze. "I don't know how to thank you." "Live well," he replied simply. "Teach truth about my people." "I will," she promised. Then impulsively, "Come visit us in Cedar Creek. Bring Ahiga. I could use your help explaining Navajo traditions to my students." Something flickered in Key's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or a deeper emotion she couldn't name. "Perhaps," was all he said. The ride to Cedar Creek was largely silent. Sheriff Blackwood attempted conversation, explaining that the town had been anxiously awaiting her arrival, but Sarah's responses were distracted. Her thoughts remained with the Navajo village, with Nijoni's kindness, with Ahiga's solemn face, with Key's final inscrutable look. Cedar Creek appeared as the sun began to set on the horizon, a cluster of wooden buildings along a rutted main street, with scattered homesteads visible in the distance. It was larger than Sarah had expected, but still modest by Eastern standards. "That's the schoolhouse." Sheriff Blackwood pointed to a whitewashed building with a small bell tower. "Your quarters are attached to the rear. Mrs. Fletcher has stocked your pantry and prepared the rooms." "That's very kind," Sarah murmured, taking in what was to be her new home. They stopped before a two-story building with a sign proclaiming it the Cedar Creek Hotel and Dining Room. Several townspeople had gathered, curious about the new arrival. A plump woman in an apron rushed forward as Sarah dismounted. "Mrs. Miller, thank the Lord you're safe. We were beside ourselves with worry. And this must be little Emma. Oh, you poor dears, coming all this way only to be set upon by savages." Sarah stiffened slightly. "Actually, Mrs. Fletcher, dear. Beatrice Fletcher." "Mrs. Fletcher. It was Apache raiders who attacked the stagecoach. The Navajo people sheltered us and saved our lives." Beatrice Fletcher's smile faltered momentarily. "Well, how fortunate. Still, you're safe now, among your own kind." She took Sarah's arm, guiding her toward the hotel. "You must be exhausted. We've prepared a hot bath and supper for you." As Sarah allowed herself to be led away, she glanced back. Sheriff Blackwood was deep in conversation with several men, occasionally gesturing in the direction from which they had come. The sunset painted the scene in the same crimson hues as the Navajo village, yet everything felt different, confined somehow, despite the open space. Later, clean and fed, Sarah sat on the edge of a proper bed for the first time in nearly a week. Emma slept in a borrowed cradle nearby. The room was comfortable, the people welcoming. This was what she had traveled across the country for, a fresh start, a purpose, a community that needed her. Yet as she gazed out the window at the unfamiliar stars, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if Key had been right about the wind-blowing people where they were needed, rather than where they planned to be. "We're home now, Emma," she whispered, though the words felt hollow somehow. "This is our new beginning." But as she drifted into an uneasy sleep, Sarah's dreams were filled with desert vistas, children's laughter, and a pair of dark eyes that had seen through her carefully constructed composure to the loneliness beneath. Sarah stood before her class of 12 students, ranging from 6 to 14 years old. After 2 weeks in Cedar Creek, she had settled into a routine. The townspeople were kind if somewhat reserved, and the children eager to learn. Yet something felt incomplete. "Today," she announced, "we're going to learn about the first people of this land." A freckled boy named Thomas raised his hand. "You mean the Indians, ma'am?" "Yes, Thomas. Specifically the Navajo people, whose land surrounds us." Mrs. Fletcher, who served on the school board and frequently observed classes, shifted uncomfortably in her chair at the back of the room. Undeterred, Sarah continued, "The Navajo call themselves Diné, which means the people. They have lived in harmony with this land for generations, developing wisdom about its plants, animals, and seasons that we would be wise to learn." She spent the morning sharing what she had learned during her stay in the village. Navajo words, beliefs, the significance of their crafts. The children listened with fascination, especially when she described how Navajo children their age learned both traditional ways and new skills for a changing world. After class, Mrs. Fletcher approached, her lips pursed. "Mrs. Miller, while your experience with these people was certainly unusual, I'm not sure such detailed instruction is appropriate." "The children should understand their neighbors," Sarah replied calmly. "Fear comes from ignorance, Mrs. Fletcher. Be that as it may, there are parents who might object to their children learning native customs. Then perhaps those parents should meet some Navajo people themselves," Sarah suggested. "Judge with their own eyes rather than through stories and rumors." Mrs. Fletcher's eyebrows shot upward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A cultural exchange," Sarah said, the idea forming as she spoke. "I could invite some members of the village to visit our school. The children could learn firsthand about Navajo traditions, and the Navajo children could practice their English." "That's highly irregular," Mrs. Fletcher sputtered. "Sheriff Blackwood would never approve." "Actually," came a deep voice from the doorway, "it might not be such a bad idea." Sheriff Blackwood leaned against the doorframe, hat in hand. Tensions have been high since the last Apache raid. Showing the town that not all natives are hostile could prevent unnecessary conflicts. Sarah stared at him, surprised by the unexpected support. "I'll take it to the town council," he continued, "but I make no promises." After Mrs. Fletcher and the sheriff departed, Sarah sat at her desk, heart racing with possibility. She had mentioned the idea impulsively, but now that it had been spoken aloud, she recognized it as something she had been considering since arriving in Cedar Creek. That evening, she wrote a letter to Key, explaining her proposal. Whether the town council approved or not, she wanted him to know that she had kept her promise to teach truth about his people. 3 days later, the council convened to discuss her suggestion. Opinion was divided, with some arguing that inviting Indians into town would be dangerous, while others, led surprisingly by Sheriff Blackwood, maintained that building peaceful relations was prudent. "The Navajo aren't our enemies," the sheriff said firmly. "They trade regularly with settlements north of here. If Mrs. Miller vouches for these particular individuals, I see no reason to object to a supervised visit." In the end, the council approved a single-day visit, with strict conditions. Sarah sent her letter with a trader heading toward the Navajo territories, uncertain if it would reach Key or if he would respond. Weeks passed with no word. Sarah continued teaching, introducing elements of Navajo culture into her lessons when appropriate. Emma thrived, growing stronger each day. The townspeople gradually accepted Sarah, though some remained wary of her unconventional ideas. Then one morning in late October, as frost rimed the schoolhouse windows, a commotion drew Sarah to the door. 3 mounted figures approached down the main street, Key, Nijoni, and between them, Ahiga. Sarah's heart leapt. She gathered Emma from her cradle in the corner and stepped onto the schoolhouse porch as the riders halted before her. "You came," she said simply, unable to keep the joy from her voice. Key dismounted, his expression as controlled as ever, though something warmer lingered in his eyes. "Your letter found us. It seems the wind continues to blow us together." Nijoni smiled openly, dismounting to embrace Sarah. "The village talks much of the white teacher who speaks Navajo words," she said. "Ahiga insisted we come." The boy slid from his father's horse, clutching Sarah's book of nursery rhymes. "Hello," he said carefully, the English word deliberate but clear. "Hello, Ahiga," Sarah replied, kneeling to his level. "Would you like to meet the other children?" He nodded solemnly, then reached out a tentative finger to touch Emma's cheek. The baby gurgled happily, recognizing him despite the weeks that had passed. By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching the exchange with reactions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Sheriff Blackwood approached, nodding respectfully to Key. "Welcome to Cedar Creek," he said formally. "Mrs. Miller has arranged for you to speak with the school children today." "We come in peace," Key replied with equal formality. "To share knowledge, as your teacher suggested." The morning unfolded better than Sarah could have hoped. The children, initially shy, soon clustered around Nijoni as she demonstrated weaving techniques. Ahiga shared his book with the younger students, proudly identifying pictures in both languages. And Key, to Sarah's surprise, revealed himself to be a gifted storyteller, captivating the class with tales of Coyote and other Navajo legends. Gradually, townspeople drifted in to observe. First parents, then merchants whose curiosity overcame their caution. By midday, the schoolhouse was full of people, asking questions, examining the crafts Nijoni had brought, even attempting Navajo phrases with much laughter at their own pronunciation. During the shared meal that followed, Sheriff Blackwood sat beside Key, their conversation intense but cordial. Sarah watched them from across the room, hope blooming in her chest. They discussed trading, Nijoni explained, following Sarah's gaze. "Your sheriff proposes regular market days for Navajo crafts." "That would be wonderful," Sarah said, "for both communities." Nijoni smiled knowingly, for some more than others perhaps. Before Sarah could question her meaning, Mrs. Fletcher appeared at her elbow. "I must admit, Mrs. Miller, your friends are not what I expected. That Key person is quite articulate for a—" She stopped herself. "Well, he expresses himself very well." "He speaks 3 languages, Mrs. Fletcher," Sarah replied, "and has traveled more widely than most of us." As the afternoon waned, the visitors prepared to depart. The children presented Ahiga with small gifts, a carved wooden horse, a picture book, a knitted scarf for the winter months ahead. "Will you come back?" Thomas asked earnestly. Key looked to Sarah before answering. "If we are welcome." "You are," Sheriff Blackwood said firmly. "We'll formalize those trading arrangements we discussed. Monthly visits would benefit us both." As the crowd dispersed and the visitors mounted their horses, Sarah found herself momentarily alone with Key. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You've changed minds today." "Perhaps," he acknowledged. "Or perhaps you began that change when you showed respect to those who rescued you rather than fear." Sarah smiled. "The wind blows in unpredictable ways." "Indeed." He hesitated, then added, "Our next visit need not wait for trading day. Ahiga asks about his teacher often." "I'd like that," Sarah replied softly. "Emma misses him too." Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of a connection that defied easy categorization or conventional boundaries. As Key mounted his horse, he looked down at her. "The path between our worlds is not easy, Sarah Miller." "Few worthwhile paths are," she answered, "but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be traveled." He nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Until our paths cross again, then." Sarah stood with Emma in her arms, watching the three riders until they disappeared into the gathering dusk. Around her, Cedar Creek settled into evening routines, lamps being lit in windows, the smell of suppers cooking on hearths. "We are home, Emma," she whispered, and this time the words rang true. Not because she had reached her intended destination, but because she had found an unexpected place of belonging, a bridge between worlds, where the wind had carried her precisely where she needed to be. In the months that followed, Key and Ahiga became regular visitors to Cedar Creek. The trading days expanded, bringing other Navajo families into town, gradually weaving the communities together through commerce, conversation, and understanding. Sarah's school became known for its progressive approach to education, attracting students from both cultures who learned side by side. And if the townspeople noticed how Sheriff Blackwood's initial reluctance transformed into enthusiastic support for these cultural exchanges, or how Sarah Miller's face brightened whenever certain visitors approached from the desert, they kept such observations to themselves. The wind, after all, had its own wisdom, bringing together those who might heal each other's wounds, and in doing so, begin to heal the divisions between their peoples. "Some journeys end where they were meant to begin," Sarah wrote in her journal, as winter gave way to spring. Emma slept peacefully nearby, while outside her window, Ahiga practiced his reading with Key, listening attentively. The desert stretched beyond them, vast and challenging, but no longer alien. Like the Navajo, Sarah had learned to find beauty in its harshness, strength in its demands, and possibility in its endless horizon.